Welcome everyone to the Rise podcast. Quasi Millington here. I'm here with Officer Dale Swift from Toronto Police, and we're talking about a lot of things today. As you can see, he's on duty. I mean, if you're listening to this, he's in uniform. He just came off a call and is gracious enough to give me the time today. So I appreciate it. Thank you for being on here, brother. And just a brief background, as with many people these days, I met you on Instagram. I started following, what you're doing on there. You're not only big into being a great police officer, but being a face in the community, and so connecting with people as well too. So, thank you for being on here. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a really good conversation. I love the stuff you're doing, and we said we need that positivity, especially coming from Black males on Instagram, so our younger audience can actually see this, right? So this is a great opportunity for that.
Awesome. And yeah, we have some mutual friends. I think one of my friends is a police officer for York and a youth speaker, Jeff Martin.
Yeah.
I think we know a few other people here and there. So basically, the reason I asked you on is just, like I said, to just talk about there's crazy things going on in the world of policing in North America. There's crazy things going along crazy things going on with race relations in North America, and I want to get your perspective as a Canadian Torontonian police officer, and a Black man. First off, what got you into policing? Take me back a little bit. Why are you a police officer, and are you still passionate about it?
It's so funny because originally I wanted to go into Con Ed, which is a program to become a teacher. And it was funny because high school I almost failed grade 9. Grade 10 was kind of iffy. 11 I started getting into it a bit more. But I was traveling from Chester Lee, where I grew up, to Father McGivney in Markham. So it was a crazy trek to get to school, and then there's a lot of family stuff going on too. So it was a difficult time for me, but I was happy in regards to how I finished, but I didn't get into Con Ed. And I remember being very upset about that. I had a chance to go to Michigan State and Syracuse, yeah, but then my knee blew out and a whole bunch of different stuff, right? So here I am feeling sorry for myself, but I went to Trent University. I did my degree there in psychology. And the funny thing is I did my degree in psychology because I believe, and this is personal stuff, that my mom suffers from some kind of mental health issue or concern that's never been diagnosed, which made childhood, I would say, pretty difficult. But I did it, finished it, and actually, no, it's not true. I have like 1.5 credits to get.
Get it,
I'm
man.
not gonna lie. I know. My wife keeps telling me, just go get it. And I'm like, yeah, especially when you're talking to your son too about like, he's only 10, but I'm like, yeah, we finished school. But anyways, so funny enough, I've gotten into social work and I was doing a lot of stuff with youth mental health, like with severe youth mental health with youth at risk. And as I was doing that, my cousin Junior, or Grayson, he was joining Peel, and he called me and he was like, you should become a police officer. And I'm like, no. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, you're from Rexdale and I'm from Chester Lee, and you want to be a police officer? He's like, yeah, you'd be perfect. And even then I was like, my personality, I was like, I don't have the personality for policing. And he was like, no, they need that positivity. They need to see people who are human and sociable and approachable be police officers. And to be honest, if it wasn't him that asked me, I probably wouldn't have done it. But because it was him and he's a couple years older than I am and I've always looked up to him, I was like, I'll give it a try. And then I remember going for the interview for Toronto, and I was in there. This was in 2009, yeah. And I was in there with this big white retired officer, like just whatever. And we sat down, and he was just going through my interview, and then he started bringing up people from Chester Lee. He's like, so do you know this person? I was like, yep. What about this person? I was like, yep. Every question he asked me, I literally started to slouch in my seat because I'm like, here we go, right? So I'm thinking that he's profiling me and judging me based on people that I know in Chester Lee. And anyone knows, if you're from Toronto housing, you know people. there's no way around it. You can't say, no, I don't know that person. Of course you do, right?
Okay.
That's your neighborhood.
Let me rewind you here. So Chester Lee, explain what Chester Lee is, so for people who don't know.
Yeah, so Chester Lee is Toronto housing. It's around Victoria Park and Finch. When I was there in the '90s, and it was there was gang relations, associations. There was lots of gun trade. There was any and everything in that neighborhood. Like even there was a crack house just outside of my backyard to the right,
Okay.
where I actually saw them make crack, and I was like, I had no idea what it was until one of my friends told me, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's crazy, but you saw the stuff around you. I've seen people get shot. I've had guns pulled on me twice in that neighborhood. One by a guy who I thought was my friend, and another guy because of a basketball game. So these are the experiences that you have, right?
Yeah.
So that was Chester Lee, but it made me who I was in regards to a lot of resilience. So I owe a lot to that experience, and I never not say where I'm from. And I find a lot of officers are very hesitant to say they're from these areas for whatever reason. But I think it's important to, especially for the communities I work in, to know to where I'm from. So back to this interview, so I started feeling a little discouraged. I won't lie, and I thought, okay, I'm done, right? And he didn't say a single word. He's like, okay, I'll be back. So he left, and I'm like, all right. And I remember sitting in the chair saying, you know what, social work isn't too bad. Maybe I can figure it out, and just stick with it.
And not mentally.
100%. And then he came back and he puts my file down. He holds his hands like this, and he looks at me and he's like, you are perfect for this job. And I was like, what?
Didn't expect
and
that.
The interesting thing is, here I am profiling him, big white guy, retired, blah, 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 asking me about Chester Lee. I'm like, I think I know, when all he was doing was he was just making sure I told the truth and that I was willing to share that experience from growing up there. And I remember I was taken aback, and I was actually ashamed of myself for profiling him. And I just remember we had such a good talk. He's like, we need individuals that represent our city, that understand our communities. And he's like, and you do. I look at your resume, and he's like, so you're in. And that was amazing. That was it. Like it was a journey for sure, though.
Yeah, absolutely. What sport were you gonna play before you blew out your knee, by the way?
Basketball.
Basketball.
Basketball. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Let me ask you this: how long have you been a police officer, and how has your career been overall? What did you do, and what are you doing now in policing?
Okay, so I've been in policing for 12 years. Okay. I remember when I first came on, no word of a lie, it was the first time in my life I actually felt out of sorts and out of place. There wasn't as many Black officers as I thought I would probably see. And it was interesting because I felt as if I had to really prove myself to the officers based on the fact that I was from Toronto housing. Now, don't get me wrong, that wasn't every officer. I had incredible coach officers, and I had senior officers really encouraging me to just keep being myself. But there were the odd officers who really wouldn't give me the time of day. And I wasn't used to not feeling in place, and I was very out of place. And it's interesting too, because I call it the thin black line. And what I mean by that is, here I am from Toronto housing, a young Black man, well, 32, and I have to prove to the community that I can still be trusted, that I'm not a traitor, but at the same time, prove to my counterparts and my peers that I take this seriously and I'm their brother. And it's a balancing act. And some days are better than others. But my whole career, it doesn't matter after 12 years, I am always aware of that in the back of my head. And so I did PRU. I had to do major surgery, so I was off the road for a year actually. Came back. I was on PRU as primary response unit, so I was there for a while. Then I was sent downtown to train officers on our new system. And then I came back and I got the neighborhood officer spot, which I've been doing for almost 6 years. And pretty much this role is embedding myself in the community, recognizing that you're a guest. And I think a lot of officers have to understand this. When you walk into a community that's rich with culture, you're a guest. You can't big up your chest. You can't walk around like you own it, because guaranteed they would never do that out of uniform. I'm like, I'll respect you if you go out of uniform and do that in that same neighborhood. It's not going to happen. So I said, when you're going into those communities, you are a guest, and you are just not there to investigate. You're there to invest. And I always try to push that. Shorten that word. Yeah, shorten that word to invest. Mm-hmm. And the ironic thing too is that when you invest, the investigations become so much easier, because people understand that you're not there to judge them, and not only there to gather intel and information, but you're a part of their events. You know their kids. They call you off duty. All of these things. So you literally get embedded in their community. And with social media, it's actually helped me a lot to really connect with a lot of youth that would usually and typically have nothing to do with police officers.
And I see that on your Instagram, and it's just the handle, just so I get it right. It's TP Swift, right?
Yes, it's TP Swift D, Tango Papa Swift Delta, and then ironically on TikTok it's Hood Cop Good Cop.
Hood Cop, Good Cop. Okay.
Hood Cop Good Cop. So
everybody to follow you, man. It's great to see your interaction with the community.
But you know what? And an interesting thing about that is that by doing that, there's a lot of officers, because there's a lot of old school officers who don't understand the importance of social media. And social media literally is everywhere around us, and it impacts us on a daily basis, both on negative and positive. So it's like, if you're going to connect with the community that you're serving, you have to understand that culture. And to understand that culture, you also have to embed yourself in that culture. And because I have, despite getting a lot of negativity from officers, it's been incredible with the community, right? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of officers who think it's great, but then there's some that just don't like social media for whatever reasons they have. So be it, that's fine. But they let you know that they don't approve. Which is, and the interesting thing about that is that when I've been questioned about like the stuff on social media, they reached out to our intel department, and they were like, we need more officers doing that and embedding themselves in social media, because it makes things easier for them and easier for us. And that's what we should be doing, right? You can't police old school in a new type of school environment. It doesn't work. So it's either you're going to change with the times or be disgruntled. That's the only way I can say it. So that's what I'm doing now. I love it. I might do it for another year or so and then take it from there. But right now, for me, it's all about impact. Everyone's like, what about promotions? I'm like, well, I'm not overly concerned about that. It's about my impact now. And if I'm impacting now, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But if something comes along sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know, before I forget, when the intel department tells these older officers that are not into social media, hey, look, this is what Officer Swift is doing and it's working, are any of them kind of changing around? Because they see the proof is in the pudding that you're actually investing in the community. Some things are happening because you're on social media. What do they say to that when the evidence is there that it works?
Well, it's interesting too, because there's, and I can't even say old school officers, because I have one officer, an inspector, a senior officer, who understands and actually has gone to bat for me with other senior officers. It's not the officer, it's just the mentality with the officer or behind the officer. Okay. So some will go, you know what? Oh yeah, I see it. And others just kind of just want to be the way they are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you say. I mean, I've solved 3 homicides in like 4 years, and multiple cases, all based on the fact of me being connected to the community. So the proof is there. If you look along while I've been in this position, the proof is there that it works on both sides. You have the trust in the community, and you have very effective investigations. that have ended successfully.
Yeah, yeah. So you're not just
So
having fun out there, going to their event,
no,
having a good
that's
time,
exactly
solving cases because of what you're doing.
100%. And
Yeah,
I hate this, and I hate not feeling a part of a case. Like I hate it. So I will actually put myself out there to other units saying, look, if you are looking for people or need information, let me know because I can probably find you that information. And the units that have actually reached out, we've solved a lot of stuff. So it's exhausting, and I think, but I also think it's very important to be as a black male to be on social media as a police officer. Sorry, for a lot of our youth because they need to see you can be something different, but still be yourself.
Mm.
And like I said, it's a thin black line, right? So it's been a challenge. This year has been a challenge. The whole George Floyd thing was a huge challenge. It was a youth that brought that to my attention. I was off, and I didn't even think the video was real. I was like, I'm watching this. I'm like, there's no way I'm watching this. This was fake.
Yeah.
But then when I realized it was real, my first initial thought was, wait till I go back to the station off my holidays and do a response in uniform. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do this interview first and foremost as a black male who is an officer. So I put out a 10-minute video talking about the disgust of what we saw and when it happened, because it didn't have to, but also really challenging other people to be better versions of themselves. And that despite this happening, you have two choices: be angry, scream, and create more hate, or really look for some type of solution together and learn from each other, which means that you have to pretty much unbias yourself to learn new things and to listen to those difficult conversations and have those difficult conversations, because that is the only way that I think things can heal, right? But you have to listen to people's perspectives, right? So that's my huge thing. It's always my huge thing. I'm very outspoken about that stuff, and like I said, it can be exhausting, but I'm really all I'm doing is just paying it forward. That's it.
And yeah, you're credit to the community, and I think you're in the perfect role right now. I hope there's someone coming after you. You said you might stay in another year. I hope there's someone coming after you that's going to do some good work in the community like you, because I'm sure the communities are going to be pretty bummed, for lack of a better word, that might be moving on to other investigations. But I know that's the nature of a policing career. I wanted to ask you. You said the last year has been tough. Tell me how the last year has been tough. I guess first, as a police officer, have there been any changes, positive or negative, since the George Floyd incident in last year, in your career? So, as a police officer, first.
Oh, okay. So this is actually was very interesting. So the George Floyd stuff happened. I did the video, and then Command, which is like our deputy and like our deputy, sorry, and our chiefs, like that's Command, pretty much allowed me to speak publicly on like CBC, I think CTV, and a few other things in regards to the whole defund the police thing and what that was and whatever, and articulate to what it exactly means and how it affects officers in regards to people saying defund the police or ban the police or abolish the police. And so they allowed me to speak on that stuff, which I thought was amazing.
And do you mind sharing kind of what your opinion is on that?
Which one? On
Funding
defund?
police, like you shared on TV.
Yeah. So I said, so it's interesting. So when I hear the word defund, you can't abolish police. It would never ever work. So when people are saying get rid of police, I don't see how that's possible, because a lot of the people that would never want to call us would want to call us because certain things will happen. Just it's in human nature sometimes to just do the wrong thing. And then who do you call? So the abolish thing is I never agreed with, but how I saw it was there's so much pressure put on police officers to be mental health workers, teachers, counselors, pretty much solve any and everyone's problems, when we don't have a lot of that training. Some do, some have the backgrounds, but a lot of us don't. And it what it does is it's an injustice in regards to some of the organizations that should be taking a huge chunk, especially with the mental health and stuff, aren't. So a lot of it is on us. So if there's a death, it's on us. If someone doesn't get proper treatment for a psychosis, it's us. Somehow it always comes back to us. And it gets frustrating because you don't hear about the other organizations that are directly or should directly be involved in whatever it is that we're getting blamed for. So it's not defunding the police. It is looking where we can also fund other organizations to make our job a lot better, but more importantly, have those resources for the people who use it, or who need it, who fall through those cracks, right? So I said more money should go into mental health for sure, especially with our youth, and more focus should be on our youth that come out of incarceration, who can't get a job, who we tell them go out there and be better, but yet they don't have a resume, they don't have references, they have a criminal record. No one wants to touch these kids, but yet we tell them to go out there and be better and do better. And then they go back into their neighborhood sometimes, and this neighborhood doesn't even want them. So what do? They go back to what they know, right? And it's that vicious circle again, because we don't deal with them. We only deal with them when it's something negative. So I was saying we need to put more of a positive perspective on that, and how do we help our youth and individuals coming out of incarceration who want to do better? How do we help them do better? And that's on everybody. Everybody. If you are going to change stuff and make things work for our community, it's not up to one organization. It's everybody. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, and a lot of it's falling on police. It's very well said.
Yeah.
Has your career, and I'll tell you, I interviewed another police officer, and he said this had happened to him. I want to know what your experience has been, and I suspect it might be different because of the role you're in. But he was saying that being a Black police officer in these times, he gets challenged by other Black people saying, how could you be on their side or be with the man, and all these kind of phrases that are put out there, like you're a seller or something because you're a Black police officer. Do you get any of that, and what's your response?
Oh yeah, and it's funny. I used to get that, I would say, more in the beginning, but now I just say to them like, look, I'm from your situation. You don't know anything about me, and then we start having those conversations about like those real talks. Mm-hmm. And then I said, look, if you want to see a difference, you have to be that different. I was in Chester Lee. I've been jumped by cops, beat up by cops, but I also had really good relationships with police officers as well, right? I wasn't innocent growing up in Chester Lee, right? But the stuff I didn't like, I actually said to myself, I'm in a position as a positive Black male officer to show something different. And you will either accept it or you won't. But that is your own ignorance and based on what you want to see and what you don't want to see, because ignorance can go both ways, right? If I'm showing you something different, but you refuse to see it, that's not on me. But I like to have those real talks with a lot of community members. And the great thing is because I have such a good relationship with a lot of the youth, and these are youth that are known to us and have been arrested by us and investigated by us, the community is like, no, he's good. He's good. And like I said, you realize that you have that line where you're good to them, but you're also good to your police family. And if things need to be done, like arrest and whatever in those neighborhoods, and I'm arresting someone, they're like, if Swift is arresting someone, that person needs to be arrested, right? They know me. So it's not like, what are you doing? Like, for instance, we had 2 stolen cars last January 2020, okay? 2 stolen cars, we found them. I know all the youth. We found them. We were looking for 1. We found 2. There was 5 individuals there. One guy was giving one of the cops a hard time, and he was a rookie too, and he was trying his best just to kind of get him under control. Passed my guy off to someone else. I knew the kid. I grabbed him, threw him down the ground, and started to put the cuffs on him. And I look at him, and I said his name, and he looks up. He's like, "Oh, Officer Swift," and it was the funniest thing. And the rookie is looking at me like, what? Like, what just happened there? All of a sudden, he was like, yeah, I know, we had this conversation, but I couldn't help it. So, and I frisk him, I arrest him, and then I take him to the station. And no word of a lie, as I'm parading in front of our staff sergeant in regards to the charges, he he looks at me and he goes, Swift, you're a really nice guy. And my staff sergeant's like, what is going on? But and I'm not saying every situation is like that, but it just shows that when you take that time to invest, not just in our kids that are doing well, but definitely in our kids that are not doing well, it does pay off. And it becomes less of a safety issue too, right? Just invest. That's it. Yeah.
And it sounds so simple and sounds something that everybody should be embracing. How does that invest in your community mindset relate to, the diversity that we're trying to, bring more of into society? Like, I've heard people say that, you have to find out about cultures that are different from you. And it sounds like you've gone into communities and done that as a police officer. Is that part of the answer to bridging the gap between, races that exist right now, making sure we know about each other, invest in each other? Talk about that.
I think it's very important for us to really put ourselves out there and allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And what I mean when I say strength and vulnerability, what I mean is, once again, having those uncomfortable talks with, say, someone from a culture you don't understand, right? And having those talks about things that you agree with and things that you disagree with, but at the same time, respecting that this is their culture and them respecting this is your culture. Because we have to have those conversations. And because we don't want to have those conversations, our biases get bigger and bigger and bigger and turn into ignorance, I think. But there is the internet, there is libraries, there are ebooks, there is any and everything out there to help us learn more about the people who are around us all the time.
Like, I know, it's the information's there.
Yeah, everything is there. Everywhere you look, there's going to be someone who does not look like you or from a place that you're from. So why are you ostracizing yourself and making yourself a single individual in a big area of multiculturalism? So put yourself out there to teach people about yourself, but also learn about other individuals. And it's tough. But when you do it, everybody wins. And I know it sounds simple, and it's not, because it can be very stressful, right? Because sometimes ignorant is just ignorant. But at least you're trying to bridge that gap by having those conversations. So at least you can sleep well at night and say, you know what, I tried. Like, if this guy or girl doesn't want to have anything with it, so be it. That's not on me. That's something they got to figure out. So yeah, that's the best. I think that's a great way to bridge the gap, is putting yourself out there, find that strength and vulnerability, telling your story without being nervous about it, and then listening to other people's stories. Like, when I talk to youth, I talk about growing up in an abusive home and wanting to commit suicide and having mental health issues in university. And they're like, Swift, you're 6'4", 230 pounds. Like, we would never, ever think that you had those struggles. I said, yeah. And I said, I was bulimic too when I was training for basketball. And when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the conversations I had with kids and with the children's parents, it was mind-blowing, because they just needed to know that they weren't alone in whatever it was that they were doing. But we, as police officers,
story first, right?
Yeah, you got to share first. You have to put yourself out there first. I really think it's on us more to bridge that gap than the community. We have to show them something different. And at some point, you know what? They'll reach out and say, okay, you keep annoying us. Fine. What do you want? What do you want to talk about? Like, go away. Aren't you off shift? Like, go home. That's what you want.
Yeah. So share a realistic way to do this for an officer that may not be in community policing, because I know that when I was an officer, if you were to tell me sometimes, get into my community, I'm like, listen, I got 13 calls in the queue. I got a long shift. I'm working overtime. I just got to get to these calls and then get home. How do we look? So if you're talking to another officer, how do you tell them to do more of this in an already hectic schedule?
Yeah, and it's really, really tough. And I am very blessed to be in this situation doing it. But I remember one of the things that I definitely tried to do was be like this while I was in general patrol. And the way that looks is when you're on a call, how you treat people, right? Because sometimes even in a hectic call, there's downtime where you can actually converse with the individual you're investigating, helping, or arresting. You can have those conversations where it's not where you're not trying to gather information, but just really trying to share stories to figure out like how'd you get here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And letting people tell them their stories, but you have to be willing to do that. And then the downtime we do have, sometimes we'll sit in our car and we'll go on our phone and go on social media or whatever. Sometimes I think what you should do is just when you have some downtime, just walk around the community, not to see who's doing what or whatever, but just to kind of get a layout of the community and the community can see you. And it takes minutes. You don't have to do things for hours upon hours, but you have to do stuff to make you look approachable. That's it. And no officer can say that they're call to call to call to call to call to call to call all the time. There is that downtime where you need that time for yourself. Mental health for yourself is very important. But when you literally don't have anything to do, put yourself out there to go into a community you probably wouldn't go in, and even with a partner, and just try to talk to people. And even if they're like, and they don't want to talk to you and they kiss their teeth or they flip you the bird or whatever, you still come back because you can't take it personal. They're responding to this, not you. Yeah. So why are you taking it personal? You're responding to my job. But once you start to talk to them, they forget all about this and they actually have those conversations. But it takes time. It takes a lot of time. But the significance and the benefit of it too is that you just don't see policing as arrest, 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 nag, 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 pressure, 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 frustration, 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 because you are allowing yourself to get that balance of talking to people about different things, right? Which shows the balance on that aspect of policing, right? You do have the crappy stuff, but you can also reflect on some of the positive stuff.
Yeah.
Right? But it's work. It's work.
And I can hear it in you because you sound like your passion for the job has never been greater. It sounds like you're passionate, you're out there, you're doing things. And I don't hear that from, there are a lot of officers I don't hear that from, or a lot of first responders. I don't hear that from. How do you, I guess, what would you say to officers who maybe are stressed, maybe are at the point where, you know what, nobody likes us, everybody's defund the police, and they have that negative mindset? Have you run into anyone like that? And what do you tell them? I know it's probably like a rhetorical question. Have you run into anyone like that?
No, it's I really try to talk to a lot of the new guys coming in. Some of the guys who are just old school just stay in their ways, and you can try to have those conversations. They're either good or they're not. But when it really comes down to that, I always say to them, like, why don't you just talk to someone? And I talk about like counselors or someone who has nothing to do with your personal life or policing. And I check in with a counselor once in a while, and I actually should be doing it a lot more because she helps me put things in perspective based on things that I'm seeing, but then things that I'm also accomplishing in. And sometimes when we see the negativity and we absorb it, we forget about the other aspects of us that make us a great individual, right? Because we're so focused on the negative, we take that on and we forget who we are. So I like doing check-ins with counselors just in regards to any and everything that's going on in my life. So when I go into policing, I do realize that this is just my job and it's not a reflection of who I am. And really try to have that impact just by talking to people and knowing that some days they're not going to want to see you, but then those other days they're going to want to talk to you. And I say to a lot of the younger guys coming on, younger guys and girls, I'm like, that's up to you to do that. That is up to you to develop that balance for yourself. You can either be tunnel vision and think policing is only arresting and investigating and getting the bad guy, but it's serve and protect. Don't you want to know the community that you're protecting? And what are you protecting in that community? You know what I mean? Like, so if we're saying that, don't you want to understand it? And it takes a long time because you don't always have that time to do it. But those brief moments you do, connect.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I was giving out my personal number to people or to youth that I was investigating and arresting, saying, "Listen, if you need something, man, holler at me." And people are like, "What are you doing? Like that's so stupid." But yet again, it's helped, and it's a lot. And people just wanted to go there, do their job, and go home. But I've never been like that because I worked in social work, and it was constant. So that's just how my brain is. I'm like, if I can help or give you some advice in uniform or out of uniform, so be it. Because I'm not that different from you. And I wish I had people like that in my neighborhood doing that for me. So
And you are that person now, and everything you've gone through in life has
yep.
led to people being blessed by you. So, and that's amazing. And I love what you said about even if you're on general duty and you're in the midst of a call, someone's in the back of your car, you can talk to them like a human being. You
Yep.
can do it. You can do it no matter how busy you are. I love that. I want to. I know we're going to wrap up pretty soon. I know you got a lot to do.
No problem, man.
You take off the uniform and you're just a black man now, and some youth that are disillusioned about, let's talk about black youth in specifically. They come up to you, they're disillusioned about their future, and they're a little, distraught about what their future might look like, and they feel a little bit hopeless. I think you've run into people like that. Tell me
all the time.
Tell me what you tell them to build up their spirits, and give them some resilience.
Well, the good thing about my role too is that I've been able to partner up with different community partners, organizations that can help find youth jobs, get them counseling, resume and interview workshops to better themselves that way. Finding jobs, I actually refer them to certain jobs, even knowing that they have a criminal record or they have a past, and vouching for them or them using me as a reference. And I say to them, like, look, you're not just representing you, you're representing me. This is me trusting you to use me appropriately and be the best person you can be. But it's those conversations when I'm at home where I have to tell my family, like, give me a second, I just got to talk to this young man or young lady because they're struggling. And then it's finding out who are the support systems in their life. And sadly enough, a lot of them, it's not their family. Sometimes their family is the trigger. And I'm very familiar with that just based on how I grew up. So it's being that big brother. It's having that tough talk. It's trying to figure out what they want to do, and then start implementing things into their life. Like just recently, there's a young man that I love this guy. His dad was deported for murder, and his mom, she had him very, very young, and is bitter that she didn't get to have the life that she wanted to do. And this young man got into a whole bunch of stuff, but I met him through a basketball program that I did. Wanted nothing to do with me. And this was like 3 years ago. And then I remember we were on the side and he was showing people pictures of photography that he did. So, and I'm not in uniform. I was like, yo, can I look at those pictures? And he's like, sure. So I'm going through his Instagram and his pictures, and he's an incredible photographer. So I'm bigging this guy up, and he's like, say words? Like, he baffled. Okay. So long story short, we develop a relationship. He has to move out of his house because it's very toxic. He can't find a place. So I put my name down as a reference and say that I'm his uncle. So when he goes and interviews for a basement apartment, they can see that his uncle is a police officer and will vouch for him. He wasn't going to get the place if I wasn't involved. And I'm not saying that every officer has to do that. I'm just saying if you have the chance and the opportunity to, 100%. But if you don't, doesn't mean you're not a good officer. It just means you just don't have time. Like that's fine. But I was able to do that for him. He got his place. Something happened where the owner sold her place and he had to find somewhere, couldn't find somewhere. I couldn't find him. He ends up in a shelter. I really try to make sure that I'm close to group homes and shelters as well, because that's where you find most of our vulnerable kids, right? So I go to this shelter for one of their anniversaries, and lo and behold, I haven't seen him for a year. There's a young man, and he comes up to me and he's got his head down. He's like, I didn't want to tell you, but things were kind of rough. I got charged again, and I'm at the shelter. I didn't want you to be disappointed. And I remember I grabbed him by his shoulders and I said, blah blah blah. I will never be disappointed in you. I said, I believe in you. Look how happy I am that I found you and that you came to me. And we had such a great talk where his workers and the manager actually helped him get an awesome place in Peel. So then he got this place in Peel. It was going well, but it was only temporary. So he was there for a year, right? He got some schooling done. And then recently, he couldn't find a job. So he was on the cusp of going back to certain things he used to do before. But instead of that, he called me. And he's like, Swift, he's like, I don't, once again, he's like, I don't want to be disappointed, but I just can't find a job. I'm so stressed. I was doing so well. I have a little bit of money put away from a catering business that he was trying to do and whatever, but I can't find a job. I have no clothes, nothing. I call a good friend of mine at one of the athletic stores. And I explained this young man's situation. And he says, bring him in for an interview. And I remember I remember going to pick him up, and he didn't have a phone. He depended on his friend's phone. And I couldn't get in contact with him. But I went down to the area he told me he'd be in. And he finally called me from his friend's phone and told me that he wasn't going to show up because he didn't have a haircut. He had a dirty shirt and jeans. So I'm like, nope. I talked for you. I vouched for you. I said, you are a very articulate young man. I said, you explain your circumstances to this person and they'll understand. So I took him. He went in. Like 5 minutes later, he came out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope this is good. Like I was so scared. And he comes into the car and I'm getting goosebumps and he starts to cry. And he's like, Swift, I think I got the job. I just explained to him, like, look, I've never come to an interview looking like this. It's just circumstances. But if you give me a chance, I'll work hard. And he looks at me and he said, no one has ever helped him try to find a job before, ever. And he starts to tear up. And of course I start to tear up, right? And I'm just like, I got you. I'm like, but I said, once you get this job, once again, I said, you represent both of us. Mm-hmm. And when you go, I want you to do 100%, and he'll do it 100%. But it's moments like that I love where I actually have the time in this position to do stuff like that. Yeah. And I don't post that stuff. I don't post it. I don't care to. I don't need to post and say, hey, look what I'm doing. You're either doing it because you want to or doing it because you want to get accolades. I don't care. He needs someone in his life. That's it. Common sense to me.
Yeah. And I'm going to be the one to post it. So
yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm going to be the one to post it because you deserve all the accolades in the world. There's no quote I heard that said that if you treat someone as they are, they become worse. If you treat them as they could be, they become what they should be. And it sounds like you're doing that in your community. And I can't think of a better note to end off on. Your credit to the community. I'm honored to know you as a person. Hopefully one day we can get past this virtual thing. I'll meet you in person.
Yes.
I'll give you a hug and we'll grab lunch and we'll just...
I would love that.
Do it up. Thank you for being on. Thank you for taking time off your shift to take time with me today. And there's so many officers and non-officers, people from all races can learn from you and all careers. So thank you for being on the broadcast.
Honestly, it was my pleasure. I like these conversations because you can tell they're genuine. Yeah. And like I said, we need to show our communities a lot more of this stuff, show that vulnerability, but show that we're really trying to come together in every aspect of our life to just do better. Not just for us, but for our young ones coming up. And this is a great way to do it. And yes, we definitely have to meet. And I definitely have to buy one of those shirts off you. I love that shirt. And hopefully we can do this again.
Email me your address and size, and I'll ship you one off.
Like I said, I'll pay for it. I love it. And yeah, thank you so much. I feel really good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Before we go, tell people where they can find you online.
So online, I would say the places that I'm the most active is Instagram, which once again is TP Swift D. So Tango Papa Swift, which is my last name, and then D Delta. And then on TikTok, where I have a bit more fun with my youth and stuff like that, it's at Hood Cop Good Cop. And that's it. Check me out if you want, but they're all public, so you don't have to follow me. But if you have any questions or concerns or anything you want to discuss, I check my direct messages all the time, especially on Instagram, because that's how a lot of the youth message me. So if you have a question, I promise you 100% I will get back to you.
Perfect. Thanks again, my friend.
Les, take care.